What's up, guys? Today we've got an updated PvP tier list video for you guys from the very best in the world. There have been a lot of changes that have been rolling through in the KR region as far as the actual structure of PvP, as well as balance patches and a new class. So this is going to be the first video that I'm pretty sure that is on YouTube that is going to be going over these changes or over the meta post-change. And let me tell you, it is definitely different. You're going to want to check it out. Also, chances are, if you're watching this video right now, you're probably also going to need a build or looking for PvP builds. If you need help with that, join the 1HP Discord. We've got a huge community there with over 5,000 people growing really fast. If you check out our Discord and go to the Lost Ark guide section, we've got updated PvP Grandmaster meta builds that are always being updated after every patch that rolls through Korea, posted in our Discord, along with other guides, whether they're PvE guides, generic guides, whatever that may be. One final thing, I'm going to be streaming almost every single day starting next week or a week before launch through the launch. So if you have any other questions in regards to this tier list video or just classes in general or just Lost Ark in general, I'm happy to help you. It's the best way to actually connect with me or ask me questions directly. Come find me on Twitch. Links to that will also be found in the description below. Guys, we are here today with another tier list video. We're here together with Typhoon here. He was the Grandmaster. He is a Grandmaster in KR, former Royal Roaders champion. Hello, Typhoon. Thanks for joining me. 안녕하세요, 태풍님.
네, 안녕하세요.
너무 감사하고요. Thank you so much for joining me here today. 잘 지내시죠? 어떻게?
네, 잘 지내고 있어요.
요즘 로아 좀 많이 하고 계시죠?
대회 준비하느라 이제 곧 대회 이제 내일 신청 마감인데 대회 준비하느라 좀 이제 방송 좀 못 키고 연습 좀 하고 있어요.
I was just asking him how he's doing, and he says he's been he hasn't been really streaming because he's been preparing for the next Royal Roaders tournament. Very understandable. So if you guys don't know, we are going to be doing a tier list today. First, I'm going to be asking him a few questions about PvP in general, and then we're going to go straight to the tier list. So if you're not interested in any of these questions and you just want to hear about your class, there'll be timestamps below. You can definitely just check that out and go straight to that segment of the video. But as far as Typhoon goes, again, just to kind of give you quick background info, he is a Grandmaster in Korea, former Royal Roaders champion. He's getting ready for the next tournament here, and currently we've had a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but we have had some significant changes here since the last tier list video, which I believe was like 5 to 6 months ago. So I wanted to get this updated version out to you guys before NA drops. Not to mention Korea, they recently announced that there aren't going to be any more balance changes until after the tournament. So this would be a very, very good baseline to go from. We're going to be going over every single class here today, including the ones that aren't released in North America. And that's also going to include the new artist class. Now, keep in mind, the artist class is very new, subject to a lot of balance changes. We're going to be talking about that probably at the very end of the tier list video. But to kind of start off the questions here, Typhoon, what would you say is the general direction of PvP right now? There's been a lot of talk in the past, as you shared with us, that the PvP in this game isn't the big focus, but it seems like, based off of the news in the recent events, that they are starting to focus on it, adding PvP content to the open world, including, the Royal Roaders tournament. It really seems like they're starting to focus on PvP. Can you kind of tell me your opinion and your perspective on that?
좀 별로 이제 로엔이 대륙만 나오고 아직 뭐 나온 게 없어서 아직은 그냥 반응이 좀 비슷해요. 그냥 예전이랑 좀 다를 거 없고 반응이 비슷하고, 이제 좀 이것저것 나오고 대회도 열리고 한번 해봐야 좀 알 것 같아요. 예전 대회는 이제 그때는 PVP 하는 사람이 좀 많긴 했는데, 솔직히 이게 첫 대회라서 좀 엉성한 것도 있었고 좀 그래가지고 두 번째 대회 때 이제 로스타크 그때보다 유저가 더 많아졌거든요. 그래서 한번 이번 대회까지는 이번 대회랑 저는 좀 봐야 될 것 같아요. 그 로엔 신규 업데이트 이런 거.
So Typhoon's just saying there's been a big influx of players in Lost Ark recently, especially recently, although it has been continually growing. pretty much just TLDR is like, we just have to wait and see at the end of the day. You know, it does sound pretty good that there's new content being announced, like Rowan, and, you know, the tournament coming up. We're just going to have to wait and see. Once the tournament drops, see how they do after the tournament, during the tournament, see what the new PvP content is like. Rowan just recently released. Well, the first part of it has, you know, the Guild vs. Guild Siege Wars, stuff like that hasn't dropped yet. So we're just going to have to wait and see and go from there. Second question I want to ask here is, how do you feel about the new field division and stat point changes to Arena PvP? If you guys aren't familiar, there's a big change with the PvP as far as the actual structure of it goes. They stretched out the field division so more players can see more, and they've reduced the amount of stat points that you can use in Arena PvP. So, how do you feel about that, Typhoon?
막 안 좋다 할 건 없고요. 그냥 뭔가 더 좋아졌다 이런 건 아니고 그냥 좀 바뀌었다 이거고요. 좋아진 캐릭터들이랑 바뀐 캐릭터, 안 좋아진 캐릭터들 물론 있고, 막 안 좋아졌다는 아닌데요. 막 좋아졌다는 아니에요. 이게 그냥 바뀌었어요. 이게 뉴비들한테도 좋죠. 이제 새로운 유입, 신규 플레이어들한테 좀 더 좋고, 이제 기존 플레이어들한테는 이제 그냥 바뀐 정도? 뭐 안 좋은 건 없고, 신규 플레이어들 좀 더 편하게 해준 거예요. 재미는 좀 이제 좀 계속 하던 사람들 있잖아요. 저도 그렇고, 이제 좀 재미는 좀 떨어졌죠, 이제. 근데 막 그게 재미가 떨어졌단 거지, 이제 게임이 내가 좀 좀 불리하다? 이런 건 딱히 없고요. 그냥 게임이 좀 느려져서 재미가 좀 떨어졌죠? 그러니까 원래 잘 하던 사람들은 재미가 좀 떨어졌는데, 근데 이제 어쨌든 신규 유입들한테는 좋은 거니까.
알겠습니다.
네, 저는.
So, as far as the changes goes, not good, he wouldn't say he says it's not so much good, not so much bad, it's just different. That's his perspective on it. He doesn't see it as a bad thing or a good thing, just different. What he does say is that it's definitely better for newer players. The entry level for PvP for newer players, it's good. So in that sense, it's a very good change. However, I went on to ask him, hey, look, you know, when we talked to some of the top players in Russia, some of these guys, some of the top level guys, the GM guys over there, they're not a big fan of the change. They feel like it's kind of slowed down the game. You know, like, how do you feel about that? Are you in agreement there? Are you in agreement there? And he says that it's definitely less fun for better players or vets. For the better player, it's definitely less fun. But he doesn't think it's like a disadvantage. It might be less fun, but it's not so much like a disadvantage. It's just different. But certainly less fun for the more experienced, better skilled players. The next question I have is, how much has just in a nutshell, right, without making this too long, how much has the meta changed since our last video, which is about 5 to 6 months ago?
일단은 근데 이게 시야 패치 있잖아요. 시야 패치는 뉴비를 위한 패치도 있는데, 이거는 살짝 그 밸런스에 영향을 좀 많이 끼쳤어요. 그래서 그것 때문에 이제 좀 티어가 좀 많이 바뀌었다? 일부 캐릭 제외하고는 좀, 저는 솔직히 말하면 이게 근거리가 좀 더 좋다고 생각하긴 해요. 이게 원거리들은 어쨌든 그 시야를 넓게 쓰고 이게 자기가 안 보일수록 좋은 캐릭인데, 근거리는 딱 그런 건 아니거든요.
근거리는 이제 밀리죠, 밀리. 네네.
네, 밀리는 이제 그런 건 아니에요. 이제 근거리도 안 보여서 좋은 건 있는데요. 근데 그게 원거리보다 더 많이 좋은 그런 상황이 많이 나오진 않아요. 이제 원거리는 항상 그런 상황을 만들고 게임을 했어야 되는 상황이었는데, 좀 바뀌었어요. 원거리들한테는 메타가 엄청 많이 바뀌었어요. 근거리들은 그냥 별로 하던 대로 하면 되고요. 이제 좀 더 뭔가, 이건 제가 나중에 티어리스트 설명하면서 좀 설명을 해드릴 거예요.
So yes, the short answer is yes. There's been big changes, a lot of changes, significant changes to the meta, big changes. And to kind of talk about the FOV changes, as we just talked about in the previous question, that FOV change has really affected the meta quite a bit. So melee classes, a little bit kind of, in the same situation. It's pretty similar, although it's better that they can see. They're at an advantage where they could see a little bit more. But as far as the range classes goes, you know, that was a big thing that they were able to use to their advantage, the limited FOV, and now that that's not there, it has definitely shaken up the meta a little bit. And we're going to go a little bit more into detail with this with each class when we go over the tier list. The upcoming Royal Roaders tournament. I know you probably can't give us too much, Typhoon, but can you share anything that you can share? Maybe some expectations, maybe some classes you expect to see that you didn't before, or classes that you expect to see that have always been in there. Maybe some of the classes you're thinking about playing. If you can you just tell us a little bit about your expectations going into the Royal Roaders tournament?
이번 대회에 아마 안 나오는 캐릭터는 좀 많이 안 나올 수가 있는데요. 안 나오는 캐릭터는 제가 막 그렇게 막 답을 못 드려요. 이게 이제 그 캐릭터만 하는 사람들이 있을 거고, 이제 그래서 그건 잘 못 드리는데, 자주 나오는 캐릭터들 제가 말씀드릴 수 있는 게 홀리나이트 진짜 많이 나올 거고요. 배틀마스터, 이 두 개? 이 두 개가 좀 많이 나올 것 같고.
홀리나이트가 이제 바드보다 더 많이 보일 것 같아요.
둘 다 비슷해요. 홀리나이트 바드 둘 다. 근데 홀리나이트가 뭔가 좀 더 쉽고 좋아가지고 유저가 더 많아요. 바드보다. 바드는 살짝 이제 생존하기가 좀 힘들어서 이제 좀 캐릭이 좀 어려운데, 홀리나이트는 좀 이제 좀 난이도가 좀 많이 낮아가지고 유저가 좀 많아서 대회에 좀 많이 보일 것 같아요.
So he's saying he can't really talk about too much with what classes you won't really see of, because especially as far as the tournament goes, there's going to be a lot of users that just play the classes that they personally made. However, the classes that he feels like you will definitely see a lot of, though, are Holy Knight and Battlemaster. And I went on to ask him about Bard in comparison to Holy Knight, and I was saying, well, do you maybe expect to see a lot more Holy Knights and Bards? And he said that he expects to see a lot of Bards as well, but he thinks there'll probably be some more Holy Knights because it's a little bit easier to play. And again, as far as the details, the specific details of his opinions on each class, we're going to get to that in the tier list. So definitely wait till we get to that section for the class that you want to hear, especially if it's Holy Knight and Bard and Battlemaster. Really interesting choice there. The last question that I want to ask is just a straightforward one. This class is this game is releasing very soon in the West, a couple of weeks depending on when this video gets posted. On the 8th is early access, I believe. There's gonna be a lot of new players playing. Can you give us one tip that you would give a brand new player coming into this game trying to get good at PvP?
이게 일단은 상대방 스킬 이런 거를 알기가 진짜 중요해요. 상대방 스킬 아는 게 진짜 중요하고, 그거를 알려면 일단은 물론 경쟁전 3on3가 메인이지만 그 원어너 대장전 시스템 있잖아요. 근데 그 시스템에서 이제 상대방 스킬을 좀 볼 수 있어요. 이제 그런 걸로 좀 적응을 하면서, 근데 그거를 좀 이제 적응을 하면서 상대방 스킬을 좀 알고, 이게 좀 최대한 여러 캐릭의 좀 스킬을 이해하려는 게 좀 중요한 것 같아요.
So he's saying, obviously he can only, I cornered him saying he can only choose one tip, and he said that the tip that he would go with is that in this game, to be good in PvP, it's really important to know the kit of all classes so that you can counter them or play against them, so that you know what they're doing. Even though the 3v3 is the main game type, main PvP mode for Lost Ark, it's the only rated game type. Doing 1v1s and doing the last team standing, which is essentially like 3v3 but like a 1v1 King of the Hill type of style game type, playing that game type for a new player can be very good, because it allows you the opportunity to learn skills and see individual skills a little bit better. So it's a little bit better and easier for a new player to learn other classes' kits by playing that mode, and that would be his tip. Okay, so before we actually go into the tier list, I just want to set a few rules, and I'm going to actually put this in the video because this is really important, because there's a lot of debate about this last time. This tier list is based off of 3v3 solo queue, and last time the tier list was like the best classes to climb with. This is the best performing classes at the highest levels of play for solo queue. Not tournament queue, but for solo queue. Okay, so that I want to just make that a point, because some of these tier lists with, hey, you know, is it based off of solo queue? Is it based off of ability to climb, low rating, high rating? What is it based off of? This is what it is. It's 3v3 solo queue, high level performance tier list.
오케이.
네.
Yes.
All right, so he's got it. So we're gonna start with the warrior class, warrior classes, and we're gonna start with Berserker. Okay, we're gonna start with Berserker, and we're gonna go in the order of this list right here, from left to right. 네.
버서커는 B를 줄게요.
오케이.
네, 버서커
네.
B를 주고 이제 버서커 상위 큐에서 그 상위 레벨에서 이제 혼자 플레이 메이킹을
네.
못해요. 네, 혼자 플레이 메이킹을 못하고 플레이 메이킹을 하는 거를 받아먹는
네.
캐릭터라서 솔로 큐에서는 이제 내가 누굴 만나고 어떤 조합을 만날지 모르기 때문에 막 좋은데 그 조합이 잘 갖춰지면 좋은데 그 조건을 갖춰야 돼요. 그래서 B.
It's a B tier class because Zerkers, they're not solo playmakers, meaning they don't create attack opportunities very well. They are a little bit slower, telegraphed, long cooldowns. They're reliant on their team for attack opportunities, and for that reason, in a solo queue environment, remember, not a competitive, organized team environment, but in a solo queue environment, Typhoon has them at a solid B tier class.
그래도 저는 B 줄 것 같아요. 보이스톡이 돼도 이제 대회 그 로얄 로저스 대회 이런 거 하면 A를 주죠. 조합이 되니까.
알겠습니다. 네.
근데 솔로 큐니까 B.
Solo queue, B. I just asked him, well, there is going to be voice comms in North America. I'm pretty sure there will be. Anyways, he still thinks that it will still be in a B tier. As far as a competitive environment goes, as far as like a Royal Roaders type of tournament type of style play, he'll give it an A tier. He would put Berserker in A tier. But as far as solo queue goes, definitely a B, he says. All right, next we got Gunlancer, aka Warlord as they're known in the East. Typhoon, where would you put Gunlancer and why?
워로드는 A를 줄게요.
Okay.
요즘 그 서포터를 제외하고 그 밀리 캐릭터들이 좀 강세예요.
네.
네, 그래서 이제 밀리에 좀 세고요. 밀리에 좀 세고 이제 그 파티 실드 그 파티 실드도 엄청 좋고 이제 이번 패치로 워로드는 뭐 크게 그게 영향을 받은 게 없어서 시야 패치나 아니면 뭐 신속 패치나 여기 영향 받은 게 없고 똑같은데 이제 좀 밀리 캐릭터들이 좀 더 좋아져서 A 정도.
So pretty simple here. Gunlancer hasn't been really touched too much, but due to the changes in the current meta right now, with melees being a little bit stronger, with supports always being strong, Gunlancer's position is just pretty strong right now at the moment. If you're not familiar with Gunlancer, they have solid support skills in the form of shields and whatnot. So they're just really in a pretty solid position right now. All right, so next we got Destroyer.
디스트로이어 D 줄게요.
뭐라고요? D를
D.
줘요? 오케이. 왜
네.
D를 넣어요?
이게 디스트로이어가 밀리한테 세긴 해요. 근데 얘가 그 시간이 300초에서 240초가 됐잖아요.
네.
그것 때문에 아이덴티티를 두 번을 못
네.
켜요. 그것 때문에 너프가 좀 세고 그게 이제 영향이 좀 많이 갔고요. 이 친구가 요즘 좀 딱 그거 하나 때문에 좀 차이가 큰 것 같아요. 밀리한테 그렇게 막 엄청 센 편도 아니고 요즘 레인지한테 너무 약하고 그리고 좀 신속이 더 신속의 속도? 그게 느려져가지고 좀 더 이제 더 잘 보인다고 해야 돼. 안 그래도 느린데? 네, 그것 때문에 이제 좀 전 D 개인적으로.
알겠습니다. 근데 그분들은
네.
거의 다 디스트로이어를 엄청 세다고 올렸어요. 막 A 티어, S 티어 정도를 했어요. 그거에 대해서는 어떻게 생각하세요, 태풍님은?
데미지가 센 편이 아니에요. 디스트로이어가 일단은 잘못 알고 있는 게 그냥 그거 하나밖에 그것만 이제 끊어주면 이제 하이 랭크에서는 그거 한 번만 센데 그거 한 번을 만약에 캔슬 당하면 이제 데미지가 아예 없고 이제 CC에 약하죠. CC가 안 걸리는 게 아니라 오히려 CC에 약하고 퍼펙트 스윙을 한 번 끊기면 이제 데미지가 아예 없어요. 네, 이제 그것 때문에 이제 디스트로이어 상대할 때 그리고 이제 그 인디업
네네네.
있잖아요.
네.
안 넘어지는. 네, 그 스킬 턴에
네.
빠졌을 때 약한데 대신에 장점이 이제 아이덴티티를 2번 킬 수
네네.
있었는데요. 근데 이제 시간 그것 때문에
네네.
너프 때문에 시간 240초 되고 그래가지고 한 번밖에 못 켜요.
All right, so I know a lot of the guys in the West are going to disagree with this being a D tier. Here's the reason. Number one, Destroyer, they are strong versus melee, but a 300 round timer that is now reduced to 240 seconds. So if you guys don't know, in Russia it's 300 seconds. I don't know if the 240 second change, the round time reduction has made it into Russia or not. I'm not sure if Russia has that or not. I think they might have just gotten it, but anyways, it's been like that in Korea for a little bit now. It means that they can't get their identity skill off twice in a game anymore, and that is a big impact considering, especially at the higher levels, that meant like a guaranteed point at least. Now that they can only get into their identity twice, the fact that the round time is changed is a direct nerf to Destroyer more so than other classes. They're already weak versus range to begin with. And again, the new changes with the stats being 750, they're already slow. They were already a slow class. They are now an even slower class with the stat changes, which means, for those of you who don't know, 1000 agility or 1000 swiftness was the max. That's been down to 750, so the animations are slower, the movement speed is slower, the cooldowns are higher, and again, Destroyer was already slow to begin with, and that change really didn't help. I went on to ask him, hey, look, I know the guys in the West, especially in Russia, a lot of top players put Destroyer up there in the S tier rank. To that you say, what? And his response is that he doesn't really, as far as like the damage goes, he doesn't think that there is any damage that a Destroyer can do outside of Perfect Swing. He says the Perfect Swing is the big damage dealer for Destroyer, and if that gets interrupted, you're just really not doing much damage on a Destroyer. And you're a class that just easily gets CC'd because of your slow animations, telegraphed skills. They're just very easy to kind of shut down. So for those reasons, he believes that the Destroyer is a D tier class. Very interesting. 오, 태풍님 이거 요 D 티어 처음으로 넣었네요. 그죠? 지난번에도 없었는데요.
그때는 좀 이제 그때보다 조금 이렇게 나누려면 나눌 수 있었는데 그때보다 좀 더 이제 좀 더 다 자세하게 나눠야겠다 생각을 했어요.
I was just saying that you've never put a class in a D tier before. It's very interesting. I think this is great that we've got bigger difference instead of just putting everyone one tier. And he is saying that for this tier list, he really wants to separate classes from their performance to make it a little bit more to be able to distinguish between the classes a little bit better. Okay, 좋아요. Next class we got, guys, is the Paladin. I think this is going to be a pretty obvious one. 홀리 나이트 어디로 넣을까요?
네, S 티어 넣어야죠.
그렇죠. 이거는 솔직히 설명할 필요는 없을 것 같긴 한데, 네, 기본적으로 말씀 좀 해주세요. Why?
이게 너무 좋은 게 데미지도 세고, 이번에 너프를 먹었어요. 이제 본인 이제 체력 대소가 너프를 먹었는데, HP 맥스가 너프를 먹었는데 그래도 단단해요. 그래도 단단하고 팀 케어도 너무 좋고요. 팀 봐주기도 좋고 본인이 데미지 넣기도 좋고 울티 네 그것도 좋고 그 궁극기가 PVE 때문에 상향을 한번 먹었었는데 그것 때문에 그냥 훨씬 그게 옛날 그건지 모르겠는데 그 궁극기 안에 그 원 안에 들어가야 실드를
네네네.
받았는데 아군이 근데 이제 24m 안에 있으면 어디든지 받아요. 그냥 뭐 설명할 게 딱히 없어요. 원래는 그냥
Here it is, guys. As far as the Paladin goes, pretty simple here. They did get nerfed recently to their HP base stat, but they're still tanky. They do great damage. They're great at peeling, covering teammates. They have an unbelievable awakening skill, their ultimate, which is they jump in the air and they land. They do big AoE damage if you're caught in it, and you provide massive shields that last for a long time to your teammates. And they got a buff, an indirect buff in PvP due to a PvE buff / change, which is the Awakening range. For those of you who are a little bit more experienced in this game, you should know that you used to have to be in, like when the Holy Knight goes for his Awakening, there's a big circle that's applied on the ground. You have to be in the circle to actually get the shield, and now you don't have to be in that shield. You just have to be within 25 meters of the Holy Knight and you get the shield, which is a huge buff in PvP due to a PvE change that they made. All right, so we got another juicy one here. Deathblade. 블레이드는 어디로 넣을까요?
블레이드 블레이드 A 줄게요. A.
오케이. 약간 고민하고 있었나요? 약간 어떤 티어를? 네.
이게 애매하긴
네네네.
해요. 이게 근데 아직 지금 한국 서버에는 밀리가
네.
너무 많아요. 밀리가 지금 확실히 좋아서 밀리가
네네네.
너무 많고, 그래서 블레이드
네네네.
캐릭터가 DPS 좋고 이제 먼저 진입하기 좋아요. 네. 먼저 먼저 혼자 뭘 열기 좋고, 그다음에 밀리 카운터도 되고, 어느 정도 레인지한테 약하긴 한데 어느 정도 레인지한테 그렇게 막 엄청 약하지도 않고, 헤드헌트라는 이제
네.
CC 스턴 스킬이
네.
너무 좋아서 너무 빨라서 이제 그거랑 이제 마일스톰 그 스킬들 다 엄청 좋고, 그 스피드 버프 그게 제일 좋아요. 그게 일단은 A티어인 이유고. 네. 지금 밀리가 많은데 밀리한테 엄청 세고요. DPS 데미지 세고요. 그 각성기
네,
있죠.
울티.
얼티가 엄청 좋아요. 맞추기 쉽고, 그 다음에 파괴력 있고, 한번 그 게임을 뒤집기 좋아요. 블레이드.
저기 러시아 서버에서는 블레이드가
네.
S티어 넣는 분들도 있더라고요. 어떻게 생각하세요? 그 정도는?
S티어까지는 아니에요. 제가
네.
고민한 게 B랑 A 사이에서 고민했어요. 근데 블레이드가 이제 단점이 그거예요. 그 기회, 그러니까 넘어뜨리거나 이제 CC 넣는 건 좋은데, 데미지 넣기에는 이제 하이 랭크 가면 이제 끊기가 너무 쉬워요. 그 친구도. 그래서 이제 DPS 그러니까 블레이드한테 답답한 조합을 만나면
네네.
좀 힘들 수가 있어요. 버스커랑 비슷한 이유예요. 답답한 조합을 만나면 힘들 수가 있는데, 대신에 답답한 조합이 그렇게 많지가 않아요.
Alright guys, here we go. So A tier with the Deathblade. It's a little bit iffy, he was saying. He was kind of thinking about it, and believe it or not, he was thinking between a B or an A tier. Shout out to my boy Nico Too Low, who's probably doing fist pumps right now saying I told you so somewhere out there. So to kind of break this down, great damage. The class does fantastic damage. They are a great initiator, great opportunity creator. They are weaker to range, but not countered by range. She can hold her ground against range classes. Her hard CC Headhunter is extremely good because of the speed of the skill. It comes out very fast, maybe the fastest hard CC in the game as far as like the speed of the hard CC registering. The Maelstrom skill buff is amazing, and it's what makes it an A tier class according to Typhoon. Maelstrom is a big movement speed buff that you can provide for you and your teammates that also gives you stagger immunity. You get stagger immunity, which is very, very critical to countering some of these ranged classes or stagger based classes. The class is very strong against melee. They have an amazing ult that can turn a game around. Awakening skill, that is. But to be honest, they're actually pretty... Again, we're talking about high level, the highest level of play here. They're actually easily interruptible at the higher tier play. They do have super armors, but, you know, hard CC is a thing. And he's saying that they're actually a little bit easier. They're actually pretty easily interrupted at the higher tier CC, higher tier play. And they can be a bit team reliant. If we are talking about solo queue, they can be a bit team reliant, but not to the degree of, let's say, like a Berserker. Okay. Awesome. Very interesting. Very interesting. 태풍님, 리퍼를 말씀해주세요. Let's talk Reaper.
리퍼 S.
S 티어? 와 대박이다.
네.
태풍님, 아니 이게 제일 혼자서 꼴등했던 클래스가 이제 S티어 올라갔나요? 왜 S티어인가요? I was just
이게 그 리퍼가 너프 먹을 스킬 너프를 먹고 버프를
네네.
먹었어요. 어떤 스킬을 너프를 먹고 어떤 스킬을 버프를 먹었는데 너프 먹을 스킬을 빼버렸어요.
네네네.
아예 너프 먹은 스킬을 이제 안 쓰고 다른 스킬을 썼는데 그거랑 이제 그 버프가 너무 커요. 버프가 이제 딜링 데미지가 10% 늘어났는데 이게 리퍼한테
네네.
너무 크더라고요. 예. 일단은 왜 S인지 설명을 해보면 데미지 DPS가 너무 세고요. 그 DPS를 넣기가 좀 이제 안 까다로워요. 이제 DPS 그 딜링 스킬이 이제 잘 안 끊겨요. 블레이드랑 반대로, 블레이드 버서커랑 반대로 안 끊기고 잘 상향 좀 받고 이제 은신 이런 거 있죠. 은신 같은 게 이제 솔로 랭크에서 엄청 좋아요. 네, 스텔스 그게 엄청 좋고 리퍼한테 호카이 스텔스는 좀 그냥 그런데 리퍼 스텔스는 엄청 좋아요. 그냥 스텔스 차이는 없는데 그 캐릭터 스킬의 차이인데요. 이거는 리퍼의 스텔스가 엄청 위협적이고 먼저 들어가서 뭘 하기도 좋고 빠지기도 쉬워요. 네, DPS 세고 그 얼티메이트가 너무 좋아요. 네, 맞추기 쉽고 데미지 세고 그 섀도우 트랩 그걸 빼고 이제 블랙 미스트라는 스킬을 쓰는데 그게 엄청 좋아요. 리퍼가 이제 단점이 그거랬잖아요. 체력 방어력이가 디펜스가 안 좋다. 네, 근데 이제 그게 어느 정도 안전성이 좀 보장돼서 이제 좀 괜찮아졌어요, 캐릭터가. 이제 리퍼는 그 데미지를 넣기가 너무 빨라요. 근데 그 이제 데미지 넣기 쉬운 스킬들이 이제 10% 버프가 돼버리니까 그래가지고 엄청 세졌어요. 그러니까 혼자 솔로 캐리가 되든 DPS까지 하고 혼자 기회를 잡고 그러니까 혼자 CC 걸고 막 넘어뜨리고 거기에 혼자 DPS까지 하고 빠지기까지 하니까 리퍼가 지금 S티어 됐어요. 혼자 뭘 하기 좋아요. 솔로 랭크 특징상 그게 좋잖아요. 혼자 DPS하고 혼자
시합에서도 S티어 정도 돼요? 시합 분위기에서는?
시합에서는 A티어? 시합에서도 A티어. 저 쓸 것 같아요. 근데 제가 좀 잘하는 게 리퍼라서.
Alright guys, so we got a lot of info here on Reaper. Alright, because this was a huge change to what it was before. Bam, here it is. So Reaper very recently got nerfed and buffed. Okay, I don't know if this is actually in the Russian version yet. It actually might not. It might be just unique to Korea at the moment. What ended up getting nerfed is their Shadow Trap got nerfed. Their cooldown got increased by a lot. I want to say almost like 6 seconds, I think, something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong there in the comment section below. But their damage on 빨간 스킬이죠. 데미지가. They got their red skills buffed 10%, which is pretty big for the following reasons that we're going to talk about here in a sec. But if we're going to go in order of this right here, not using the skill that got nerfed, and so the skill Shadow Trap, he's actually replaced it with a different skill. Black Mist, replaced it with a different skill, and the damage buff they received is extremely good. So the 10% damage buff that they received is just really good. Shadow Trap cooldown got nerfed, and that was replaced by Black Mist, as I just said. Before, one of the issues that Reaper had was their defense, especially when they had to burn their defense skills to actually engage. But now with Black Mist, it covers that because it gives them protection. And it's just really good. This class is actually not difficult to deal damage. And I don't mean like skill-wise. I'm not talking about like APM skill-wise. I'm just talking about it's not difficult for them to get damage out because the way their skills are designed, they're just very fast and quick. So their skills are pretty efficient at actually getting the skills, their skills and attack shots to land. Reapers can get their attacks off fast and efficiently, and that damage being buffed makes it a very hard carry class. Very good solo carry class. Difficult to interrupt them when they deal damage, unlike Berserker in Blade. Stealth mechanic, also very good in solo queue, way better than Hawkeye's stealth mechanic. Can get in and deal damage and disengage very well now. Excuse me. Very, very good awakening skill. Easy to land and does good damage. As far as tournament comp goes, he would put it as an A tier as far as tournament comp goes. So S tier for we've got S tier for solo queue and A tier for tournament comp, and it is a class that he actually plans on maybe even playing in the Royal Roaders. Don't want to give anything away, but it is something that he's planning on playing. He likes Reaper. He feels like he's very good in Reaper. So yeah, man, I'm excited to actually watch that. That's awesome. Let's go to the next class here. Shadow Hunter, aka Demonic. 태풍님, Demonic 어디다 넣을까요?
데모닉도 이제 A 티어 줄게요.
오케이, 알겠습니다. A 티어는 왜 A 티어인가요?
네, 이게 데모닉이 그냥 솔로 랭크에서 진짜 최적화된 캐릭터예요.
그게 무슨 말이에요?
솔로 랭크에서 제일
네,
좋은
네.
캐릭터? 솔로 랭크 진짜 좋은
네,
캐릭터?
네, 네.
이게 어느 정도 이제 레인지
네.
카운터도 되고 어느 정도 이제 어느 적당히 밀리 카운터도
네, 네.
되고 이제 엄청 그게 막 밀리 카운터가 막 밀리한테 물론 약한 것도 있어요. 그 특정 캐릭터들한테 약한데 그 한 대부분의 밀리 캐릭터들 나름 잘 잡아요. 데모닉이 이제 살짝 카운터가 적어요. 이제 데모닉이 이제 카운터가 적고 이제 레인지도 되고 밀리도 되고 이제 DPS 세고 무브먼트 좋고 네 이제 솔로 랭크 하기 진짜 좋은 캐릭터.
As far as Demonic, aka Shadow Hunter goes, guys, please forgive me if I use the other names because, as you guys know, they've changed a lot of the class names. So if I call classes like Shadow Hunter Demonic, you guys know what I'm talking about. Here are the list of reasons why he has them at an A tier class. They're very strong in solo queue. They're strong versus range. They can even counter some melee, despite being weak to some melee. They just don't have that many counters. They don't have that many counters compared to other classes. They have good damage. They have good movement. Just really not much change from last time, to be perfectly honest. He had him at an A tier in the last tier list video. And they also have good team backup ability. Pretty straightforward here, guys. Nothing too different as far as the Shadow Hunter goes. I think it's time we move on to the Hunter classes now, and let's talk about Artillerist. Let us talk about the Artillerist class, aka the Blaster class. 블래스터는 어디다가 넣을까요, 태풍님?
블래스터는 블래스터 B 줄게요.
오케이, 알겠습니다.
네. 이번에 레인지들이 좀 많이 힘들어졌다고
네.
했잖아요. 개인적으로. 이제 멜리들이 좀 많아졌다고
네.
했죠, 제가. 딱 그건데 이제 밀리한테 센데 대신 좀 레인지한테 좀 약하고 이제 좀 아군 조합. 그러니까 팀의 이제
네네.
조합? 네, 팀의 조합도 좀 많이 타요. 그래서 막 적팀 조합도 많이 타는데 팀 조합도 많이 타고 이제 DPS는 높아요. DPS는 높은데 하이 랭크에서는 거의 안 맞아줘요. 이게 잘 특히 그게 막 쉽게 맞긴 맞는데 쉽게 맞아주진 않고요. 이제 그리고 그 이제 스턴을 맞춰도 딜을 넣기에 좀 많은 이제 작업, 그러니까
네.
딜레이가 필요한데 그거를 이제 좀 잘 끊어주고요. 보통은. 네, 그래서 이제 블래스터 지금 밀리 상대로 좋은데 이제 좀 캐릭터가 좀 DPS 넣기 좀 힘들어서 B.
Alright guys, so we've got the Artillerist here. Now the first point is the fact that the range classes got a little weaker and melee classes are being a little bit stronger. That brings Artillerist up a little bit. However, same issues as before. It can be very team comp dependent, excuse me. They have high DPS, very high DPS, but it's just very difficult to get that DPS out at the higher tier rank. They need time to get the damage off, but it's just easily interruptible at high tier ranks, and for those reasons, he has him at a solid B tier class. Artillerist는 약간 시합 분위기에서는 어느 티어를 넣어요? 만약에 시합이면?
시합이면 A. 그러니까 이게 블래스터를 이번에 시합 룰이 바뀌었어요.
바뀌었어요?
그 스택 캐릭터로 쓸 수
뭐라고요?
있어요. 캐릭터를 3개까지 쓸 수 있어요. 한 명당. 네, 그래서 이제 상대가 어떤 걸 할 거 제시 예측을 해서 블래스터가 이제 멜리한테 강하다 했잖아요. 이제 블래스터의 단점은 이제 팀의 조합을 맞추기가 힘들다는 건데 그거 이제 버서커랑 똑같아요. 버서커 이제 조합 시합해보면 A라고 했잖아요. 근데 이제 팀 조합을 맞춰줄 수 있고 이제 블래스터로 이제 적팀 카운터 이제 팀 그런 거까지 해줄 수 있어 A 정도 될 것 같아요.
Interesting. So he has them at an A tier for tournament play. One of the interesting things that he was mentioning just now, as far as this year's Royal Roaders tournament, is that one player can only choose 3 classes. So you're actually limited to what classes that you can pick. So that's definitely going to affect what's considered higher or lower tier for tournament play. Okay, interesting stuff there. All right, I say we move on though, and we are going to move on to the Deadeye, aka also known as the Devil Hunter class. 태풍님, 데빌 헌터 어디다가 들까요?
데빌 헌터는 C 줄게요. 데빌 헌터가 그 이제 딜을 좀 하려면 좀 근접에서 딜을 해야 되거든요. 딜을 하려면 가까이서 딜을 해야 되는데 이제 진입을 하려면 데빌 헌터가 이제 딜을 하려면 그 사전에 이제 원거리에서 좀 이제 그걸 했잖아요. 그 이제 시야 안 보이는 데서 막 쏘고 안 보이는 데서 막 들어오고 그게 이제 데빌 헌터의 주특기였는데 이제 시야가 너무 늘어났어요. 데빌 헌터의 사정거리보다 더 늘어나서 이제 데빌 헌터가 좀 많이 활약하기 힘든. 그리고 이제 신속 스피드 내려갔다고 했잖아요. 그 때문에 되던 콤보가 조금 안 되는 게 좀 있어요. 네, 그래서 이제 이번 그 바뀌고 데빌 헌터가 좀 많이 너프를 먹은 느낌이 들고 이동기가 좋긴 한데 건슬링어보다는 좀 그게 좋은 게 없어서 네, C 줬어요.
Alright guys, as far as the Deadeye goes, here is the breakdown for Deadeye. They actually need to get close to get their damage out. Instead of getting their damage out at range, they actually need to be melee to get their damage out. They had an advantage before with being able to hit people and catch people from afar with an FOV advantage, but now that's essentially gone due to the new changes with the system. There were also a few combos that were possible before, but also not possible anymore due to the 750 swiftness. The changes to the stat points. Before you could have 1,000 swiftness, now you can only do 750. Really, at the end of the day, this class just doesn't offer anything more than what a Gunslinger can. Like, just Gunslinger can do everything a Deadeye can, but just better really at the end of the day. Which is going to be the next class we talk about. 태풍님, 저희 그러면 건슬링어 어디다가 들을까요?
건슬링어는 A를 줄게요.
건슬링어는 A. Alright, we got Gunslinger in the A tier. 건슬링어는 왜 A tier일까요?
이제 건슬링어는 좀 데빌 헌터랑 다른 점이 그 DPS를 이제 좀 원거리에서 좀 더 넣을 수 있어요. 이제 스킬들이 데빌 헌터랑 차이점이 이제 스페이스 바랑 스킬이 이동기가 하나 더 있거든요. 이제 에어볼 슈퍼하머 스킬이 하나 더 있는데 그게 무브먼트 그 생존 그러니까 버티기가 진짜 좋고 스페이스바 2번이 제일 커요. 그게 이제 건슬링어도 물론 이제 시야 때문에 좀 피해를 본 게 있는데 시야 늘어나서 각성기 얼티 있죠. 얼티도 데빌 헌터보다 훨씬 좋고요. 스페이스바 2번이 생존력 차이가 엄청 커요. 그러니까 그 방향을 바꿀 수 있어서 이제 상대가 이쪽으로 갈 것 같아서 스킬을 쓰면 반대로 그렇게 쓸 수 있고 좀 더 시간을 끌 수 있고요. 슈퍼하머의 시간을.
Alright, so guys, we've got a difference in performance despite being typically known as like the same class, male female. There are some differences here. Number one, gunslingers deal more damage at range. And these changes are relative, and you can see these changes being relative to the Deadeye. Sorry, I was trying to get that out. Gunslingers they also have 2 spacebar dashes, which is really big because it allows you to juke, and you can change directions with the dash. it's not double. They're not 2 dashes like in fighters, 2 dashes where you can dash once, wait, do some skills, dash again. You use them consecutively, but it just gives you more movement potential and higher uptime on your protected frame. Not to mention, they just have a way better ult than Deadeye as well. They have a pretty good ult as well, and for those reasons, we have Gunslinger in the A tier compared to the Deadeye being in the C tier. That is going to bring us to the next class, Scouter. Scouter is a class that has been very strong S tier class for the longest time. A lot of changes here. Interesting to see where Typhoon's going to put the Scouter class. Scouter also, I do want to mention this. Scouter also did just get nerfed yesterday again. They got nerfed yesterday again, so that is a complete fresh change. I don't know how much that's going to factor into the decision here with Typhoon. But I did want to mention that because not only have they been getting nerfed, but they just got nerfed again in Korea yesterday. 태풍님, 스카우터는 어디다가 넣을까요? 스카우터는 어제 너프도 또 당했는데요. 어떻게 생각하세요?
스카우터 제 생각에
C
C?
티어. 오.
네. B와 C의 사이인데
Between B and C. 네.
C
C
해줄게요.
He's gonna go with C. 네.
이유가 이 친구가 진짜 좋았거든요. 근데 너프를 너무 세게 먹었어요.
네.
이게 이번 지금 랭킹 한 1위부터 10위의 절반이
네,
스카우트거든요. 네. 그랬는데 그 때문에 이제 좀 과하게 좀 너프를 먹여서 이제 대회 때문에 그런 것 같은데 그 로얄 루더스 때문에 네, 그렇게 세게 너프를 먹은 것 같은데 스카우터가 많이 이제 처음 레인지한테 셌는데 이제 무브먼트 좋은 캐릭터 레인지 밀리를 떠나서 이제 무브먼트 이제 기동성
네.
네, 이동기 좋은 캐릭터한테 좀 약했거든요. 그래도
네네네.
이제 약하다기보다는 좀 그래도 물렸는데 이제 그 경직 슈퍼하머가 없어졌어요. 아예 그 이동기에. 네, 그래가지고 이제 생존이 엄청 힘들고 이제 선공권도 없어지고 그 이제 그 넘어트리 다운 시키는 스킬 그 경직이 없어져서 선경직이 맨 처음 그 빨아당기는 거 있잖아요. 첫 번째 공격에 경직이 없어져서 네, 이제 선 기회를 잡기 좀 힘들고요. 뭐 CC 좋고 DPS 센 게 장점이긴 한데 근데 너무 생존기 같은 부재가 좀 생존기가 좀 많이 너프를 먹어서 네 저는 지금 좀 별로 애매한 것 같아요.
Alright guys, so big changes to Scouter. They were a very good class, as you guys know if you've seen the other videos, and not only Typhoon's tier list but the other tier lists. They were just really good, you know, S tier class. But with the recent nerfs, they've just really dropped. All the top rankers, if you look in KR, all the GMs, they're essentially playing Scouters, and for that purpose, they were nerfed. I don't know if it was for that purpose, but a lot of it had to do with the Royal Roaders tournament coming up. So the guys that you see in the top ranks right now, they were there pre-nerf, and they've recently been nerfed pretty hard. Regardless of ranged or melee, they were weaker or could be shut down against like faster, more mobile classes. Now with the removal of stagger immunity or stagger super armor or level 1 super armor, however you want to call it, on one of their key skill movements, they're just that much easier to be shut down or caught by those classes. Really by any class that applies a stagger there. And also they have a skill, I don't know what it's called in the west, but I think it's called active pulse in the east. It's a skill that provides shield for your teammates, assuming that you have the correct tripods for PvP, or the meta tripods, I should say meta, not correct. And it's a drone skill where you control the drone and then you use a skill, and it first staggers the target and then knocks them up, and also provides shield to any teammate that's there. That lost its stagger ability in the opener, so now it just knocks up, but that loss of stagger there makes it so that at higher levels of play, easily dodgeable. Again, we're talking about higher levels of play here, so again, that type of change is probably going to be significantly less it's going to be less significant at the lower rankings, but at the higher rankings, that little bit of time to be able to dodge a skill without having to worry about a stagger is just it's just pretty significant. So for those reasons, we now have Scouter at a C tier. 호카이는 어디다가 넣을까요? Let's talk Sharpshooter.
호카이 D 줄게요.
D요? 오,
네.
너무 센 거 아니에요? Alright, so we got Sharpshooter as another D tier class. Very interesting. Typhoon, take it away.
얘도 데빌런트랑 비슷해요. 이제 상대가 안 보이는 데서 은신을 해서 들어가고 상대가 안 보이는 데서 이제 사이퍼를 당겨야 되는데 이제 문제가 시야가 늘어났잖아요.
네네네.
어디서 뭘 하는지 찾기가 너무 쉬워요. 네, 그것도 그렇고 이제 스나이퍼를 당길 때 신속이 줄어들어서 그 이제 상대 호카이가 이제 스나이퍼가 어디서 당기는지 딱 보이는데 딱 그 보였을 때 걔가 좀 더 이제 당기고 있는 시간이 길어져서 딱 보고 이제 딱 그냥 피하기가 너무 쉬워요. 네, 그것도 그렇고 이제 원래도 안 좋은 캐릭이었죠. 제가 그렇게 옛날에도 막 좀 꼴등에 박아놓은 것 같은데 네, 얘는 그때보다 더 안 좋아졌어요. 이제 데미지가 센 게 장점이긴 한데 맞기가 힘들어요. 이제 하이 랭크에서는 그 스텔스 이런 게 진짜 안 당해주고 호카이 같은 캐릭터한테는 이제 로우 랭크에서는 뗄 수 있는데 하이 랭크에서는 진짜 약해요.
Okay, guys. So we got the Sharpshooter here. Similar to Deadeye, they took advantage of field of vision to be able to hit people from off screen. But now they just can't. Now they just can't. I don't know why I wrote, but not the class is super. Now, Jesus, I wrote my own thing. Sorry, guys. But now the class is super easy to track and dodge due to FOV. This is a big thing, guys, because to begin with, the way sharpshooters work in PvP, you have long charge ups and then you have long range. So before you were able to hit people from off screen, and you just don't have any insta-cast strong burst skills. All your high damaging skills have a cast to it. And now that you can actually see them and track them, even as a melee class, it's just that much easier to dodge. It's just that much more difficult from the perspective of a sharpshooter to get your damage off. They weren't strong before either, to begin with, and well, they just didn't get any better, really, at the end of the day. At high ranks, people just don't get hit by Hawkeye. They really don't. They're difficult to get damage off as a Hawkeye. They can be strong at low tiers, but really weak at high tier. So if you guys remember the previous video, I believe they were obviously rated higher than a D tier class. I think he actually had them rated a little bit higher, but remember, the tier list that we had before was to climb from scratch. Excuse me, from the beginning to climb. And the fact that this class with stealth, can be easier to climb because it can be strong at the lower tiers. When we're talking about just the high level play, which is what we're talking about in this tier list, you're just not gonna get your damage off because players are just good to the point where they could really just track you and dodge your skills. So for that reason, we have Sharpshooter at a D tier class. 창술사, Lancemaster. This is another former hard S tier class. I don't know if they're gonna hold their position in the S tier class, but let's see what Typhoon has to say. 창술사 어디다 넣을까요?
B와 C의
B하고
사이인데
C 사이요. Between a B and C, guys. 어디다가요?
조금 더 C에 가까운 것
C
같아요.
쪽으로요? 말씀 좀 해주세요.
너프가 진짜 세요. 이 친구 너프가 쿨다운 이런 거랑 이제 경직 판정 이런 거 좀 바뀌었고요. 경직 슈퍼머가 없어졌죠. 이제 진입기에. 그게 진짜 큰 이유인데 창술사가 이제 들어갔다가 나올 때 이제 좀 많이 불편해졌어요. 원래 너프가 너무 셌다? 너프가 너무 스카우트랑 비슷해요. 너프를 엄청 세게 먹었고 장점은 좀 이제 DPS 데미지가 센 건데 사실상 혼자 기회 잡기가 판정이 다 너프 먹어서 혼자 기회 잡기가 아직도 괜찮긴 한데 그래도 옛날보다 많이 힘들어졌어요. 다른 밀레이 캐릭터들이 너무 세졌고 그리고 다른 밀레이 캐릭터에 비해 좀 많이 밀려서 이제 굳이 쓸 이유가 없는 장점이 딱히 없어요. 이제 밀리로서의.
알겠습니다. All right, so Lance Master, here we go. Nerfs to the Lance Master were massive. They're just really big. The recent nerfs. Huge reason is losing stagger immunity or level 1 super armor on their main engage, which is their longest, one of their longest. It is pretty much their main engage as far as like CCing people. It used to have stagger immunity and would be a hard CC. They lost stagger immunity on that, and now they're just a little bit, it can be just a little bit difficult to engage and catch people now and create those attack opportunities. They used to do it very well, but now can be a little bit difficult. They still have very good DPS, but now with the nerfs, it's just been more difficult to catch other classes compared to what they could. Not to say that it's difficult to catch people. It's not to say that it is difficult to catch other classes. They were just really good at catching classes before, and now they just can't catch them as well. Also, the fact that other melee classes coming up also bring it down, obviously on the tier list, right? So other classes also coming up bring this class down as well. Next class, that's going to take us to the next class. We got Scrapper, aka Infighter as it's called everywhere else. 태풍님, 인파이터는 어디다가 둘까요?
인파이터는
B,
B에 줄게요.
오케이.
이번에 지금 A티어 애들 있죠? 이 인파이터가 지금 B티어 아래 애들은 확실히 잘 때려요.
네네.
근데 이제 S, A티어 있는 애들한테 좀 상성이 너무 안 좋아요.
아,
좀 뭐라 하지? S, A 이 얘네들한테 너무 약해요. 그래서 이제 뭐 DPS 상향 이런 거 좀 많이 먹긴 했는데 DPS 버프 이런 거 먹긴 했어도 예전에 말했던 것처럼 DPS 넣기가 좀 힘들고 그 C, D 이런 애들한테 확실히 강한데 S, A 이런 애들한테 지금은 좀 약해서 이제 나중에 S, A가 좀 바뀌면 좋아질 수 있긴 한데 아직은 아닌 캐릭터. 장점은 그래도 이제 스킬 쿨다운이 좀 빠른 편? 이제 그게 좀 장점. 이제 슈퍼하머, 에어본 슈퍼하머가 좀 많고 그게 장점인데.
okay, 알겠습니다. All right, so the Scrapper guys, when we're talking about the Scrapper, if we're looking at the tier list right now, Scrappers just aren't that great when it comes to the current S and A tier classes. However, they are very strong against the current C and D tier classes. So for that reason, that's a big reason why they're currently in the B tier from Typhoon's perspective. Still, it's still the same as far as not being able to get your DPS off. It's a little bit more. It's still a little bit difficult to get all of your DPS out because it's being, you know, because it's a slower class. Excuse me. If another thing he did mention is if the S and A tier classes come down, Scrapper's position will for sure change. If we are talking about the pros though, the access to level 2 super armors to knock up and knockdowns, they you know, access to those super armors as well as having lower cooldowns would definitely be pros to this class. But other than that, not too much change with the Scrapper despite getting a recent buff with their damage. So with that, we are going to take it to the Soulfist class. Soulfist aka Soulmaster. 솔마는 어디다가 넣을까요?
소울마스터 기공사도 B에 줄게요.
네, 알겠습니다. B 티어는 왜 B 티어 넣을까요?
B 티어 내려온 게 이제 스턴 스킬에 그 경직 슈퍼마가 없어졌어요. 이번에 너프 한번 먹고 그것도 없어지고 이번에 그 에러본 그 시간? 그 공중에 떠 있는 시간 이런 거, 기상기 속도 이런 거 있잖아요. 네네. 이제 그런 거 영향을 많이 받은 캐릭터 이 세 가지가 아르카나, 서머너, 소울마스터 이 세 가지인데 소울마스터 이 기공사 얘네는 그 구르기 쿨다운이 빠르다고 했잖아요. 이제 그래서 그게 좀 장점이라서 계속 이제 좀 안 아프게 맞고 구르고 이제 그게 좀 장점이었는데. 이제 공중에 좀 채공 시간 그런 거 너프 때문에 좀 이제 좀 많이 약해진 느낌? 시야 이런 것도 좀.
Alright guys, when it comes to the Soulfist, they've come down from the A tier from before, which is where they were at. because of a couple of reasons here. Really, a couple of reasons. The first reason being that they lost stagger immunity on their ranged hard CC. They had a very good hard CC that they could use at range. Has a little bit of a wind-up period, and that wind-up period has lost its stagger immunity, so it's a lot more interruptible now. That on top of the fact that they've been nerfed by the normalization of knock-up time. So if you guys aren't aware, recently they've normalized the knock-up duration on all classes. So there were certain classes, namely Arcana, Summoner, Soulmaster, that had shorter knock-up duration. So for example, if you've ever played Striker and you tried to knock up a Soulmaster with that flash kick, that second knock-up not getting off, not being able to combo them through that, a lot of that came from that. So now Soulmasters had a shorter duration of being knocked up when they got punished, but now they are punished just like everyone else due to the normalization, and that is obviously a nerf to the class because, you know, they were stronger having, they were obviously stronger having less knock-up time, really, at the end of the day. Also, they were affected by the FOV changes by being a semi-ranged class. As the final point. So we've got the Soulfist down to a B tier class, and that moves us to my favorite class, the Striker. 스트라이커는 어디다가 넣을까요?
스트라이커는
A
A
tier.
tier.
오, 좋아요. We got Striker in the A tier. I had a feeling this was coming. 스트라이커 왜 A tier일까요?
이게 신속 패치에 영향이 진짜 없어요. 이 배틀마스터랑 스트라이커 이 두 개 캐릭이 신속 영향이 진짜 하나도 없고, 연기되는 거 어차피 되던 거 다 되고, 이제 레인지가 좀 시야 패치 이런 것 때문에 레인지한테 좀 답답하던 것도 없어졌고, 이제 그리고 뭐 기상기 패치 이것 때문에 그 월승각 안 맞고 굴러서 역공당하고 이런 게 좀 많았는데, 이런 게 다 없어져서 그냥 전보다는 좀 많이 좋아진 것 같아요.
Alright, so as far as the Striker, and this kind of goes with Battlemaster as well. 그러면 배틀마스터에 대해서 잠시만. Okay, Striker and Wardancer, they were one of the couple. Striker and Wardancer both were just not affected by the swiftness changes, compared to other classes. Really, like the change in the 1,000 agility to 750 agility, or swiftness rather, is how we call it in the West. They are one of the two classes. These are the two classes that were the least affected by that change. It's like almost like non-existent compared to some of the other classes that were impacted by it more. The weakness of field division that they did have as a melee class in itself, two range classes, despite not even being weak to range classes, in fact, they were actually already strong to those ranged classes. But the one thing that could have been a little bit of a that put Strikers and Wardancers at a disadvantage would be the FOV. That's also now gone, and the normalization of knock-up times also affect Striker and Wardancer in a positive way more than any other class. They were affected by it the most compared to other classes. And again, if you're just coming straight to the Striker section, what is the normalization of knock-up times? Certain classes had longer knock-up periods. So when you would knock up a certain class and they're in the air and you CC them, certain classes would have a longer or shorter duration than others. And that being normalized now really affects Striker and Wardancer in a positive way more than other classes. Which brings us to the next, Wardancer. And I'm just going to leave this here since a lot of this is the same, since I wrote Wardancer, and all these really apply to Wardancer as well. 배틀마스터는 그러면 어디다가 둘까요?
배틀마스터는
S tier. 와, 대박. S tier Battlemaster. Very interesting. We see a lot of Battlemaster. I noticed not too long ago there were like 4 out of the top 12 classes in Grandmaster right now in KR were actually Wardancers. 저도 지금 방금 말씀했던 거는 제가 랭킹도 봤었는데 배틀마스터가 겁나 많더라고요. 한 12등까지 4명이나 있더라고요. 배틀마스터에 대해서 좀 말씀해 주세요.
배틀마스터가 이게 지금 데미지 감소 이게 있잖아요. 원래도 엄청 좋다고 말해줬잖아요. 이제 디펜스가 엄청 좋고 DPS 세고 그게 엄청 좋다고 말했잖아요. 이게 배틀마스터가 이번에 레인지가 좀 약해지고 밀리가 좋아졌잖아요. 배틀마스터가 좀 이제 시야, 이거 스트라이커랑 똑같아요. 이거는 스트라이커랑 똑같은데 신속 영향 안 받고 그냥 애들 콤보 안 들어가는 거 다 들어가고 이제 그게 거기서 이제 스트라이커보다 더 좋은 점이 뭐냐? 엄청 안 아프게 맞아요 이제. 그거랑 스피드 버프, 파티 스피드 버프
네.
팀. 네 그거랑 그 스피드 버프에 데미지 리덕션 버프까지
네.
같이 있잖아요. 파티 리덕션 버프까지 같이 있고 셀프 리덕션 버프도 있고 엄청 안 아프게 맞는데 엄청 세게 때려요.
네네.
네, 그래서 이제 스트라이커보다 더 좋은 점이 이제 팀적으로 엄청 좋은. 이제 스트라이커보다 좀 더 안 좋은 점은 이제 기동성,
네.
무브먼트 이게 좀 더 안 좋은데 대신에 3on3 게임이라서 그 배틀마스터의 장점이 더 커요 스트라이커보다.
We have our third S tier class, Wardancer, and here we go. I'm leaving this up here because that applies to Wardancer as well. Again, damage reduction, really, really important when it comes to 3v3 PvP in Lost Ark. Damage reduction buff, still amazing. Range classes and melee classes, range classes going down and melee coming up due to the PvP changes. Wardancers are better buffed from this very fact. They can combo better now due to the normalization. What separates them from Striker, what separates them from Striker, I should say, is that they take less damage. They provide speed buffs to their team, and they provide damage reduction to their team, self damage reduction. They're just tankier now, but can dish out damage, so they can deal out good damage, and they're even tankier now. Movement, as far as like what Striker is, as far as what they're not, as far as what they lack in comparison to Striker would be movement. At the end of the day, just Striker has better movement. I'm not talking about movement speed because obviously that would be better for Wardancer, but the double dash and the Cloud Dragon from Striker. Striker has better movement than Wardancer, but since this is a 3v3 team PvP team deathmatch game type, the advantages that Wardancer have over the Striker is just better. It has way more value, and for that reason, Wardancer is an S tier class. Now we're talking about the mages here. Bard, we've got Bard in the S tier. 바드는 뭐 바뀐 거는 거의 없죠. 바드는 왜 S tier일까요?
바드 저번에도
네네.
S tier였잖아요. 시야 패치로 이제 좀 더 안전해졌고요 본인이. 거의 세이프. 이제 레인지들한테 좀 많이 약했는데 바드가. 레인지들이 어디서 뭐 하는지 보이니까 좀 더 안전해져. 생존율이 올라갔고 홀리나이트랑 비슷해요. 그냥 홀리나이트 좀 더 다른 거는 이제 홀리나이트는 이제 본인이 좀 더 이제 단단하고 본인이 좀 더 이제 디펜스가 좋고 바드는 이제 팀 디펜스 이제 하드 CC 쉴드 네 그 스킬이 엄청 좋아서 그거랑 이제 에어본 슈퍼아머 그게 좀 많고요. 에어본 슈퍼아머가 좀 많고 이제 바드가 잘하면 잘할수록 홀리나이트보다 바드가 이제 잘하면 잘할수록 이제 그게 좋아요. 그 실력 편차가 좀 크게 나고 하이티어 게임이다 보니까 바드의 이 버프 영향력이 엄청 커요.
Bard is pretty similar, guys. They were always an S tier class, being the other true support. FOV changes make them a little bit more safer now that they can actually see more classes, especially range classes, which they were a little bit weaker to before. Not a little bit, they were weaker to before. They're just similar to Paladin at the end of the day when it comes to what they do and what they provide. I mean, obviously damage reduction and shields. Hard CC protection buff, still amazing. A lot of value there. We should add that in as a notable thing. Solid CC protection for herself. Really, if we're just trying to add content to this section at the end of the day. At high tier play, the skill of a bard is very important and is really showcased. So at higher tier play, bard skill level very important as far as how they perform and what they can contribute to a match. Let's go to the Arcana next. Arcana에 대해서 좀 얘기해 주세요. 네.
아르카나는 C 줄게요.
Alright, we got
네.
Arcana in the C tier. Arcana는 왜 C tier일까요?
데빌런트랑 비슷해요. 이 레인지인데 DPS를 좀 이제 근거리에서
네.
이제 해야 되고요. 그 얘도 이제 안 보이는 이제 시야 넓은 시야에서 그 상대 이제 기회를 잡고 상대를 이제 히트를 적중시키는 게
네.
장점이었는데요. 그 장점이 좀 없어졌어요. 이제 DPS가 괜찮은 게 장점이긴 한데 하드 CC가 좀 살짝 부족하고요. 보통 이렇게 때려 한번 딱 치면 걸리는 게 아니라 이렇게 장판 설치형이라서 이제 좀 원하는 그때 끊어주는 게 좀 힘들고
네.
좀 다른 레인지에 비해서
네.
좀 애매해요.
Alright guys, Arcana, pretty similar to Devil Hunter here. They're actually they're a range class where you get picks and catch people at range, but to deal damage you actually have to be in melee, so that's why they're very similar to Devil Hunter in that regard. And just like Devil Hunter, the changes to the FOV, the field of vision, it's an indirect nerf to Arcana because of that. You could just track what Arcana is doing. You know, more classes can track what they're doing now, which makes it easier to dodge. At the end of the day, that's what it is. And the other notable point is that although their DPS is actually very good, they're pretty solid overall as far as damage goes, but they just lack in the hard CC department. It's not that they don't have hard CC, they do have hard CC, but they don't have any insta hard CCs. Like for example, the Blade's hard CC or the Scouter's hard CC, where it's just instantaneous, or even like the Infighter's hard CC, like once you just get it off immediately. Unfortunately, this class there's a little bit of a the hard CC doesn't register until like the later portion of the skill, after like a stagger or whatever is applied. So for those reasons, we have Arcana at a C tier.
아르카나 하나 더 설명하면요, 이제 레인지가 이제 티어가 높아지면 얘도 같이
네네.
높아지는데, 지금 보면 거의 다 밀레이가 이제
네네네.
위에 있잖아요. 레인지가 좀 티어가 올라오면 아르카나도 같이 좀 올라온다. 이걸 좀 추가 설명을 좀 하고 싶네요.
Okay, so if range, so the other thing he wanted to actually add there is if the range classes go up, Arcana will too. As you can see from the tier list, a lot of the melee classes are at the top. We got Wardancer, Paladin, Reaper, Gunlancer, Deathblade. We got Striker up there. A lot of these top tier classes are melee, and if a lot of those melee classes start coming down, or the ranged classes go up, Arcana will also go up as well. So we're just gonna go ahead and write, since melee classes are at the top of the moment, Arcana's position is affected by it. They'll move up if the other ranged classes move up as well. 그러니까 레인지 클래스가 올라가면 아르카나도 올라가는 거죠. 네.
네네네. 레인지 상대로 좋아서.
Arcana, also want to mention, Arcana is stronger versus ranged classes. So that's obviously why that is the way it is, the point that we just made. Okay, so now let's go to Summoner. Summoner는 어디다 넣을까요?
서머너는 A 줄게요.
Okay, so we got A tier for the Summoner. A tier 왜 A tier인가요?
서머너는 이제 시야 넓어진 거에 영향을 거의 안 받았고요. 네, 레인지이긴 하지만 이제 그 다음에 그 신속 그러니까 스피드 너프 750 됐잖아요. 750 됐는데 이 친구는 원래 700대를 썼어요.
아, 네네.
그리고 이제 밀리한테 강한 캐릭이라고 저번에도 얘기했잖아요. 이제 레인지도 나름 괜찮아요. 막 엄청 힘들다 이런 건 아닌데, 대신 이제 블래스터랑 비슷하죠? 블래스터랑 비슷한 설명인데 블래스터랑 좀 다른 점이, 블래스터는 이제 DPS가 좀 오래 걸린다 했잖아요. 그러니까 D를 넣기가, 데미지 넣기가 엄청 쉬워요. 서머너는 이제 하이 레벨에서도 좀 잘 통하고요. 서머너가 요즘은 또 밀리가 많다 보니까 서머너가 좀 많이 좋아졌어요.
Guys, when it comes to the Summoner, this is the breakdown. Even though they are ranged, they really aren't affected by the FOV changes like the other range classes are. Swiftness max coming down as well doesn't affect them as well because they were already a 700 stat class. Other classes having to play at 1000 swiftness coming down to 750. I mean, Summoner, no change there really because they're already in the 700s anyway. They're strong versus melee to begin with. Weaker to ranged, but not that weak to ranged. Another thing that he said is that they are similar to Blaster as far as like DPS goes, but the way you actually get the DPS off, it's just way easier to Blaster versus, you know, because Blaster has a big delay, Summoner no delays there, so just really strong DPS. And even at the higher tier, even at the higher levels of play, they perform pretty well. They perform relatively well. Melee's coming up right now in the tier list, being strong. Make the Summoner strong as well because they are strong against melee classes. So for those reasons, we have we have Summoner in the A tier. Now, Sorceress is next, and it is not our last class. We are going to be talking about the Painter class, which I don't have an icon here. That's going to be the last class we talk about. But let's talk about the Sorc first. 태풍님, 솔서는 어디다가 둘까요?
B와 A의 사이인데
Between an A and B, he's saying. 네.
A?
Okay.
A?
A tier.
좀 A에 가까워요.
Closer to A tier, he's saying.
DPS 데미지가 넣기 엄청 좋고 뭔가 쉽고 DPS 엄청 쉽고 좋아요. DPS가 엄청 센 편이고 데미지 그만큼 근데 또 넣기 쉽고 네 그리고 이제 리치가 길어요. 리치가 긴 게 장점이고 이제 어느 정도 레인지도 견제가 되면서 이제 밀리한테도 좀 세요.
네.
네 그리고 이제 아이덴티티 이 텔레포트가 엄청 좋은 생존기라서 엄청 좋은 스킬이라서 그 셀프 그것도 엄청 좋고요. 솔로 플레잉 이런 것도 너무 좋고 단점은 이제 에어볼 슈퍼머가 없다 이건데요. 네 그래서 좀 이제 한번 그리고 이제 아이덴티티가 많이 때려야 차는데 만약에 내가 계속 못 때리고 계속 맞기만 한다 이러면 텔레포트를 못 쓰고 계속 맞는 상황이 나와요. 네, 그래서 이제 본인이 이제 좀 한번 때리고 계속 피하면서 때리고 이걸 계속 해줘야지 그게 로테이션이 돌아가야 좋은 캐릭터. 스카우터한테 엄청 약해서 잘 못 썼는데 스카우터가 이제 좀 많이 없어서 좀 좋아졌어요.
Alright guys, when it comes to the Sorceress, here are the notes. They're very easy to get damage off. It's just very easy to get your damage off as a Sorc. Very high DPS, long range, solid against range, but also pretty strong against melee as well. The teleport identity that you have is amazing. If you're not familiar with it, you build meter as you land attacks, and when you build enough meter, you can teleport. You can teleport up to twice with a full meter. Can hold her own as a solo player. So you're not super reliant on teammates. You could do your own self-carry. Weakness would be that they don't really have knock-up super armor. So level 2 super armors, immunity to push or knock-ups, however you want to call it. They don't have any of those. And they are reliant on skill to a certain degree. It can be difficult for you if you don't land your attacks because a lot of your mobility outside your spacebar is reliant on your meter, and your meter is gained by landing damage. So if you're not landing damage, you're not going to have blinks up, teleports up. If you don't have your teleport up, then it can be very punishing to play. So you have to be able to land attacks to build that meter, and you can just blink around. They were also countered by Scouter before, but with Scouter getting nerfed, Sorcs came up, right? So there we have it. We have Sorcs there, and last but not least, we have the Artist/Painter. I have no idea what it's going to be called in the West, but we have this final class. Now, guys, cut Typhoon some slack here. This class has only been out for 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks. Yeah, about 2 weeks. Chances are by the time we get it in the West, it's going to be very different. But I'm going to let him kind of explain his thoughts on the class and where he thinks it should be placed.
일단은 사람들이 아직 그 정보가 많이 없잖아요. 근데도 괜찮은 것 같아요. 저는 그래서 지금 당장은 일단 B.
Okay. Right now, again, not a lot of experience there amongst all the players, but he thinks they're not bad. And if he had to give an answer right now, he'd place it in the B tier. 설명해 주세요.
이제 일단은 살짝 서포터보다는 레인지 느낌이에요. 서포터보다는 레인지 느낌이고 이제 레인지로서는 엄청 좋아요. 이제 슈퍼아머, 굿 슈퍼아머, 에어본 슈퍼아머 스킬을 가지고 있고요. 그리고 CC 스턴 스킬이 두 개가 있는데 그 두 개가 엄청 좋아요. 하나는 이제 즉발인데 시선이 빠른데 그다음에 그게 좀 설치형이에요. 살짝 남아 있어요. 근데 그거랑 이제 좀 이제 딜레이는 있지만 좀 광범위 기절이 있고요. 광범위 스턴도 있고 DPS도 괜찮은데 단점이 이제 롱 딜레이가 좀 긴 편이에요. 길이가 좀 긴 편이고 아이덴티티가 좋긴 한데 지금 버그 때문에 그 이 성능을 제대로 모르겠어요. 아이덴티티는 힐 스킬이 좋긴 한데 성능을 아직 잘 버그 때문에 잘 모르겠고 그 다음에 레인지라고 생각하면 될 것 같아요. 서포터보다 레인지 느낌이.
Here are Typhoon's first impressions when it comes to painter or artist. Rather than a support class, she feels more like a ranged DPS class. She has solid ranged attacks, solid airborne super armors, meaning tier 2 super armors, you know, your protection to being, your CC protection to being like knocked down or knocked up. Solid super armors, has 2 very good hard CCs, one of which lingers. 2 very good hard CCs. Her DPS is just pretty good. The only issue, one of the issues though, is her skills are very slow to get off. They have long windups, so they can be interruptible. They do have range, but they're just not the fastest skills to be used, right? They can be punished. The windup time is not the best. The identity that she has, where she drops these balls that allow your teammates or anyone, even yourself, as an artist, you could pick them up yourself and actually heal yourself for a big heal. But right now they're bugged. They're bugged at the moment, so it's tough to kind of say, you know, what his opinions and stance is on that because of obviously the bug. What is the bug? Well, sometimes you just don't fucking get healed. You interact with it and you just don't get healed, and I can attest to that. It's happened multiple times. It's like you see the ball, you see the thing there, you're expecting this big 17, 18k heal, and then nothing. You consume it and then nothing. So that is a bug right now. So it's tough to say. Once they fix that though, we'll see. At the end of the day, you want to just look at it like a ranged class. Really, it's better to be looked at as a ranged class than an actual support. So for those reasons, we would put it in the B tier class here. Now, that is going to conclude the tier list, and I want to give Typhoon an opportunity to maybe make some closing statements in regards to this tier list, and I'll ask him that right now.
티어리스트 중요하긴 한데요. 중요하긴 한데 이제 자기한테 좀 잘 맞는 캐릭터 좀 찾는 게 중요한 것 같아요. 이제 자기 손에 잘 맞는 캐릭터, 아무리 이제 D 클래스라도 서로 다 모든 캐릭터들이 다 이제 다 각자의 개성이 좀 있어서 이제 좀 본인한테 잘 맞는 캐릭터를 좀 이제 PVP를 막 이제 전문적으로 좀 제대로 하고 싶으면 여러 캐릭터를 해보고 이제 좀 잘 맞는 캐릭터를 좀 찾는 게 저는 중요하다고 생각해요.
Tier lists are important, but it's more important to play the class that you perform well on, regardless of tier. So rather than saying like, you know, hey, giving the generic answer, hey, play what you enjoy, it's more like every class has something that they contribute as far as like performance goes, as far as like climbing rankings goes in a 3v3 team deathmatch game. So you're going to be better off at the end of the day playing a class that fits your style, where you can perform your best on, rather than picking a class, hey, this is S tier, you know, I'm gonna pick this class because, you know, everyone thinks it's an S tier class, but not actually perform well on it because it's just not your style of play. So he recommends, if there's something that he's going to say as far as like a closing thought goes, or a tip, or any type of advice for you guys, that's what it would be, to play a class that fits your style well. As far as this video goes though, that's gonna be it. Wanted to try and keep this short and sweet. If you guys want some more details on how the class is played mechanically, we actually went over a lot of that in the first tier list video. So even though the tier list itself is different, we do go a little bit more into detail with how the classes are played. You know, what the rules were, what the rules are for each class. So definitely check out that first tier list video if you want a little bit more detail on the class that you're interested in. I will link that tier list video in the description below. Another thing that I do want to mention is if you join our Discord, we do have the Grandmaster PvP meta builds for every single class. Courtesy of Typhoon, they are his personal builds and they are constantly updated. If you join our Discord, you go to our Lost Ark guide section, everything's going to be posted there. The guides are in Korean, but don't let that deter you, because all you got to do is match up the icons and logos. And the reason why I haven't changed them into the English version is because as Typhoon updates those guides on his end, they will be automatically updated for us, so we can always stay up to date with what the best in KR are playing, and he's always updating those as he continues to play through the patches. So that can be found in our Discord, as well as any other info or guide. I will also have some information as far as basic playstyles, as far as roles, pros, cons for each class. That was also provided to me from Typhoon. That's also in our Lost Ark Guides section. Everything can be found in our Discord, so come join our Discord. We have a very active Discord there if you want to talk about PvE or PvP. And as always, I'm streaming on Twitch. I'll be streaming almost every single day once the launch begins. So come hang out with me if you have any more questions in regards to this. And of course, especially if you can speak Korean, go check out HP Who, which is his Twitch name, Typhoon. Go check him out on his stream, as he's streaming whenever he gets the chance, although he won't be super active right now because he is getting ready for the tournament. Huge shout out to Typhoon. I really hope Typhoon, I really hope you do well in the Royal Roaders tournament. I'm going to be rooting for you. Thank you so much for doing this tier list video with me once again before our launch. Huge thank you to you from the Western communities. Thank you so much.
감사합니다.
All right, guys. Till next time. See you guys in the next one. Peace.